Indian media. Hopes and fears over ties with China. There are hopes and fears in Indian newspapers ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's landmark visit to China in May. Territorial differences and crushing defeat by China more than 5 decades ago still loom large over bilateral relations despite booming trade, argues an editorial in the Indian Express. While visiting China in May, Mr. Modi will be hoping to charm the dragon whose stare Indians have feared ever since the catastrophic War of 1962, the paper says. According to the paper, the stakes are particularly high now because Beijing feels threatened by India's recently strengthening security ties with the U.S. Both countries have to find ways to address these real insecurities and build a functional relationship, the Indian Express says. In similar vein, an editorial in the Times of India calls on the two countries to cast aside historical baggage and script a new chapter in bilateral ties. It urges Delhi to show flexibility in its territorial dispute with Beijing, recalling how much is at stake. Home to almost a third of humanity, cooperation between India and China can galvanize the region and propel the common dream of an Asian century, it says. On an optimistic note, the paper argues that both sides seem willing to mend ties and sign substantial agreements during Mr. Modi's visit to China. During President Xi Jinping's visit to Delhi in September last year, India and China signed 12 agreements, one of which will see China investing £20 billion (12.2 billion) in India's infrastructure over 5 years. Both Mr. Xi and Mr. Modi had said that peace on the border was important for progress in bilateral relations. Papers now hope that Mr. Modi's Beijing visit will give momentum to the peace process. Fighting terrorism. Meanwhile, Indian Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj's recent visit to Beijing gives further reason for hope that Indian-Chinese relations are headed for a breakthrough, says the Hindustan Times. China warming up to new friend India, says the paper's headline. One sign of the importance that Beijing attaches to relations with India is the fact that Mr. Xi broke diplomatic protocol by meeting the Indian Foreign Minister in Beijing, it says. Ms. Swaraj on Sunday also met her Chinese counterpart Wang Yi and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov as part of the RIC Russia, India-China Group Summit. The three countries agreed to share expertise and knowledge to fight global terrorism at the meeting. Ms. Swaraj said that both Russia and China welcome India's entry into the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. Bitter poll campaign in Delhi. Meanwhile, papers say political campaigning in Delhi took a bitter turn on Monday when the two lead players launched no-holds-barred attacks on each other ahead of voting for assembly polls on February 7. The Indian Express quotes the BJP as accusing the rival Aam Aadmi Party (AAP) of accepting illegal donations. It's a matter of serious concern, the Indian Express quotes the BJP's Power Minister Piyush Goyal as saying. The AAP has rejected the charges. The Times of India agrees that as campaigning for Delhi enters its final stages, the contest has become bitter and personalized. In an interview with the paper, the Aam Aadmi Party leader, Arvind Kejriwal, accuses the BJP of targeting his caste in its political advertising by describing them as troublemakers. "Fight with me. Why target my community?" he asks. And finally, India's media have also publicized what they describe as another case of sexual harassment of a woman,